Welcome to the Soul Seeker Podcast. I'm your host, Sam Kabert. I started this pod back in 2019 when I was taking my first steps on the path of remembering. And at the time, the tagline for the show was a journey of self-discovery. A year later, it became a journey of remembering. Yet, what I know now is back then, I was still seeking. And what I've come to know now is that it's the journey of seeking that brings us the silent, slow stillness of acceptance. And therein lies our own innate wisdom. It's my mission now to eradicate the glorification of hustle culture, as it was my drive in entrepreneurship that led to a greater whole, and that's because I was outsourcing my sovereignty rather than looking within. So let this be your invitation to take a deep breath in and remember that at any time we can shift our thoughts and our feelings to create the outer world in which we wish to live. Soul Seekers, it's time to grow. Let's go. What is up, fam, and welcome back to another episode of the Soul Seeker Podcast. I am your host, as always, Sam Kabert, and in this episode, we're going deep. I mean, we always go deep in this podcast, don't we? I feel like we do. I don't feel like I need any disclaimers for that, but I will say this one may potentially feel a little bit triggering for some of you, and the reason is we touch the subject suicide quite a bit. We don't talk a lot about suicidal ideation or suicide in depth in terms of like prevention. What we're talking about more is the other side, because I think a lot of us just don't want to admit that we have these thoughts about potentially taking our own life. So if that feels triggering to you, or if that's something that you're not ready for, fair warning, we are going pretty deep. But I trust that you're here for a reason, because I know you guys, and I know you come back to these episodes because you're looking for that real, raw vulnerability and truth and authenticity. So if that's you, you're going to love this episode. And this one, I have my homie Trevor Hult coming on the show. Trevor is an established expert in relational leadership with a mission rooted in personal transformation. His story is so impressive, and one of the things he talks about is his rock bottom. Again, we don't go into depth in terms of his experience with suicidal ideation, but we do talk about how he lost over 100 pounds, or nearly 100 pounds, in the process of becoming who he now is. And he teaches a framework that he calls the Be, Do, Have framework. Trevor's spoken to over 20,000 students. Guys, Trevor, I forget his age, but I want to say he's 26. He's young. That's the point. He's spoken to over 20,000 students, and he's trained over 10,000 mentors, which include working in 19 different states. I think that's absolutely incredible. I know y'all are going to get so much out of this one. Please enjoy this episode with Trevor. And before you do, I just want to remind you that if you are looking for tools and guidance to come back to yourself and address the core roots of your, let's call them issues, and just go to deeper layers, then the best thing you can do is to join my free, yes, I said free Breath Club community. In the Breath Club community, I'm teaching you how to hold space for yourself and others, and also guiding you through every single week a live breathwork session on Zoom. So if that's something that you're interested in, definitely go to the show notes and join the Breath Club. And if you haven't already subscribed and rated and reviewed this podcast, please do so, because it helps other people find this podcast and benefit from the wisdom of these amazing guests just like Trevor. So with that, enjoy this episode with Trevor Hult. What is up, and welcome back to another episode of the Soul Seeker Podcast. I am really stoked to sit down with my homie Trevor Hult. But before we do, as we always do in this podcast, we're going to take 3 simple breaths. So Trevor, for yourself, for me, for all of you out there listening, You can always breathe with us. Be mindful of what you're doing and don't close your eyes if you're going on a run and you're going to fall on your face if you close your eyes, or worse if you're driving a car, but you can always breathe with us. So Trevor, for yourself, for me, and for any of you out there that are in a position to close your eyes, I invite you to just take a seat, close down your eyes, and begin to shift from the chaotic and busy outer world into your inner landscape, sitting straight up. And through your nose, simply inhaling all the way up, sipping in a bit more air at the top, and sigh out, let it go, let it go, let it go. Another slow inhale all the way up, sipping in a bit more air at the top, holding the breath, rolling up the eyes, and exhale, let it go, let it go. And one last one for good measure. Inhaling all the way up. Sipping in a bit more air at the top. Hold the breath. Rolling up the eyes. And sigh it out. Let it go. Let it go. That's a good.
Man, that feels good, dude.
Yeah, and here we are. Trevor, I'm so stoked to have you on the Soul Seeker Show.
I'm stoked to share a community with you, man.
Yeah, absolutely. We just met last week at a 3-day intensive training. It was so good to connect with you, hear a bit of your story. But yeah, for anyone that is brand new to you, what you're all about, just give us a quick little intro on what you're all about.
Yeah, so I honestly, dude, this was I didn't even expect to be into where I'm at right now. My expertise, what I wanted to have my expertise in was I wanted to be a general manager for an NHL team. Like, that was my dream. As a young kid, I was super into sports. Luckily, blessedly, my parents introduced me to sports at a young age. And, you know, I'm also a twin. And one of my favorite parts about myself is that I'm a twin. And I got to share all my experiences, all the wins and as well as losses with my brother. And it's so cool that, like, it's such a blessing to have somebody that literally from moment of life to now I've shared every breathing second with, and I forever will. Just to have somebody like souls attached to is just super cool. No pun intended. But so growing up, like, being a twin was super special, but also, like, there's blessings and there's dichotomies to everything. And so from a very young age, I saw the opportunity for people to compare people at a really young age. Because when you're twins, like, people would always say twins, like, oh, they wouldn't really say, oh, how's Chad and Trevor? Well, sometimes, but how are the twins? That's what my parents would tell us growing up. Or where we were growing up, we were supposed to always have the same type of friends or belong in the same type of interests. And so from a young age, I didn't like that. I didn't like being either put in a box, and I didn't like to put other people in a box. So as a young kid, I was also super expressive. I was super into a lot of things, and I still am. And I think that's also what really gives me a lot of, as a gift, is my relatability. I can relate to a lot of people just because of my interests. And a lot of times what we think is a diverse interest, what might separate is actually, instead of a separator, it's a unifier. And so because if you gain more knowledge on a lot of more things, you have more things to talk about to a higher amount of people. And not to say that you're a know-it-all, but the fact that you know information that you can talk to somebody about, so you can provide a connection to somebody. And so I valued authenticity, and I valued people's ability to express themselves from a really young age. And so growing up, I was that kid that would always, talk to a lot of people, and I didn't really belong to a specific friend group. I was friends with a lot of people, and I didn't like being rejected. Like, I don't think anyone does. But from being a twin and being compared a lot, what I've learned is that comparison is a form of rejection. When people compare you to somebody else, they're rejecting every bit of authenticity that you have. And
how did you come to that lesson? That's a big one right there. Let's unpack that a little bit more.
Yeah. I think everybody is born with is God-given talents, gifts, and abilities that only they can express are only unique to them. And I see I just got a gift of reading human beings, and everyone has their own uniqueness, right?
Right.
And
But coming back to comparison, like what was that statement you said? That was a good one.
I said comparison is a form of rejection. And when somebody compares yourself to somebody else, like if somebody compares you to somebody else, they are rejecting the authenticity within you. Or if you compare yourself to somebody else, you are rejecting your own authenticity about yourself.
Yeah, and we often hear about like comparing ourselves to other people, but
Right.
not talked about as much of when else is comparing you to someone else and how they're rejecting a part of you. Like that is a big one that doesn't get talked about as much. So was there a specific moment in time or experience where you came to learn that lesson?
It's a good question. Dang. Literally the earliest memories of just somebody rejecting something that you created, which is a sense your authentic version of whatever it is. It was literally back in preschool. I remember building towers of blocks. And then all of a sudden, just because some kid didn't like the way that I built my tower, he knocked it down. And so what I believe is an expression of your creativity is also an expression of your authenticity. No one else will create the way that you create anything. And a lot of times you get so many people trying to copy somebody else, but you can't. Everyone wants, what's that quote? Everybody is born an original, but some people die a copy. Like I don't want to be a copy, and I don't think anybody should be a copy. Like you are you're your own soul, no pun intended again. But again, from a very young age, like if somebody just doesn't like something sometimes because you're the one that did it or you have the thought. But I'm learning this growing up. It's like you have to use that as inspiration, but it can't be like copy and paste. So I learned this from one of my favorite people, my mentors, is that you have to model and modify. You model what somebody else is doing if it's working and you kind of are interested in it, but you have to modify it in a way where it's authentic to you.
100%. Yeah. All great points here. So thank you for going there with me. So you're tell us the story earlier about how like when you're a kid, you wanted to grow up and be a GM for a national hockey team, which is an amazing dream. What shifted since then? Because you're not a GM for an NHL team and you still are doing amazing work in the world, helping tens of thousands of students. Tell us a little bit more about what shifted and what you're doing now.
Yeah, and so I was, like I mentioned earlier, I was a super high-end athlete, and so going through school, and then when I got to college, well, back up, in high school, I won the state championship my senior year. I mean, that's that picture right there. Yeah. And so that was like a super peak moment in my life. Senior year, state championship. Won it on the Garden Ice for the Boston Bruins, my home team, where they play. I got to win a championship with not just my actual brother, but my hockey brothers who I've played multiple years with, and so that was a huge part of my identity. It was a hockey player, state champion, and then I went to school from being in the New England area. That's where I'm from. I went to school in South Carolina, and hockey's not super prominent, and it's on the rise now. But back then, the school I went to Coastal Carolina for school, Shants Up, and so the hockey program was there, but it wasn't intriguing. The cost was not worth it, and so I was like, you know what, there's life beyond that. But in trying to figure what that is, I kind of lost myself. I didn't know what my identity was. And so with trying to find your identity also might come in the process of losing yourself. And so when you try to find new things, you might hang around, or you don't know who you are. You might hang around with people you don't typically normally hang around, or you might do things you don't normally typically do. And yes, like did some of that, and so I started to lose myself, and school wasn't necessarily like my cup of tea.
Like Skinner says, right? Never really care for school, always a golden rule.
And so, like, again, not the education. Like, education is important. It's so important to be educated, on many things. But to me, like, I didn't feel rewarded for how my brain worked in school. Like, you could ask me what happened in this game, and I could recite you like what period it was, what time frame, how the play develops, what player, what times, all the stats. But then you ask me to go over a math equation, and that information just goes like right through my head. And like my brain just worked like that. So for me, like, growing up, like, a lot of times you're compared by one of two things: is your academics or your athletics. And so there's way more to people than athletics and academics. And so for me, I try to figure out, like, what is that? And so I was about 240 pounds, my height, and I was really suffering with depression, with anxiety, and being on, like, really, like, suicidal thoughts, very, very deep, dark. And what eventually was my deepest, darkest point ended up being my turning point. And there was a specific moment where, again, I remember brushing my teeth, like everybody does, brushing their teeth one night, and spit my toothpaste out into the sink, rinse my face, whatever. And right after I rinsed my face, I look up, and what it looked like, what I met myself for the very first time in probably like over a year, I just broke. I was completely ashamed of who I was, what I stood for, what I looked like. And so from that moment on, like, something had to change. And so over a span of 2 years, I lost over 80 pounds. I went from 240 pounds down to 152 pounds in over a span of 2 years. And that was and there's a lot of thought process and a lot of growing it within that 2 years that we can talk about as well. But just going from somebody who feels lost to somebody who now tries to find people is kind of crazy.
Yeah, I'd love to go a little bit, and congratulations, that's amazing. This isn't my first time hearing it, but for many of you listening, it's absolutely incredible, and I just applaud you so much. And I want to unpack this a little bit more. I shared with you that just recently, at the time of this recording, in the past few weeks, I've now become a survivor of suicide for the second time, and that's not something that I'm proud of. And there's a lot of things that come with that, because suicidal ideation is something that I've experienced in my own life over the years. And I know for myself, this was a really profound experience that I'll just share recently. About a year ago, I had a ceremony with the toad. It's Bufo, 5-MeO-DMT. And part of that experience was like so much gratitude for seeing the movie What Dreams May Come with Robin Williams. Have you seen that movie?
I have not seen that movie to run through it. I've seen clips of it, but I haven't seen it from finish to end.
It's brilliant. It's beautiful. I saw that movie when it first came out. I was probably about 9 years old, give or take. And my parents didn't want me to watch it. And it's basically about like Robin Williams, both of his wife and himself, their kids die in a car accident. No spoilers here. Plus it's a super old movie. And then he dies a couple of years later and his wife can't take it. So, and she takes her own life. She dies by suicide. And the whole movie is about, like, quote unquote, the afterlife and how Robin Williams is reunited with his kids. But his wife went to hell, and their explanation is suicides don't go to heaven, they go to hell. And that's not a belief I have. We could go there in terms of heaven and hell. But what's fascinating about this, and the reason why I bring it up, is because in that medicine ceremony, I had so much gratitude for seeing this movie, because at a young age, you already mentioned some of like your stuff that was imprinted on you at a young age, but at a young age, it was imprinted on me that if I were to take my own life, I would go to hell. And in a lot of ways, that saved me from ever taking my life, because that was a belief I had held. Fascinating, right?
Right. And then going off of that, like, I think we can agree that we believe the same. Like, I don't believe if you take your own life that you go to hell. And that was a belief that I had. So I was kind of like, well, maybe it's worth it. If I'm not going to hell, then why shouldn't I? Right. Like, that is a real hard conversation to have with yourself, is if I believe that, you know, I'm going to heaven even if I kill myself, so why not?
Yeah.
But in a moment of that, what stood out to me is that is the most selfish thing I ever could do.
Yeah.
And because what about my brother, you know, my twin brother, right? The person that I've came into this world with, the person that I've shared every loss, every hardship, as well as every celebration, every trophy with him. Like, and I'm like, what would he do without a brother? And I'm a damn good brother. You know, what about my parents? Like, they've given me everything, and all of a sudden here I am giving them nothing except pain. And from that moment, I realized that your life is not about you, but it starts with you.
Mm. That's beautiful. I want to go deeper on your life's not about you, but it starts with you. Just to highlight the selfish piece, you know, that is a piece that has helped me as well to not do something. But then are you close to anyone, or have you been close to anyone that took their lives?
No, I've not like super directly,
right?
As in being friends or something like that, but I've known of people who have been close to people who have dealt with that.
Right. Just from my own experience of now being a survivor of suicide twice, like this selfish piece is so interesting because it helps like with my own self in terms of like, or anyone else that would be experiencing suicidal ideation. I think that's super helpful. But for someone that's listening where they might have someone close in their life that took their life, that selfish piece is hard because it can harbor resentment, you know?
Right.
And I think you and I both would agree that like, it's not so much that the person wants to take their life. They just want to stop the pain. And when we can start to have the compassion to see that, you know,
it's the fact of, I don't want to die, but I don't want to be alive. Like,
exactly.
Does that make sense? Like, I don't want to die, but I don't feel like I want to be alive, which I feel like is something you might only understand if you've been through that. And I mean, again, some things are just not meant to understand unless you are able to understand. And so for me, like, I didn't want to die, but like you said beautifully, I just was sick of the pain. I didn't want to feel anything anymore.
Yeah, exactly. That's it. So you mentioned it's not about you, but it starts with you. Could you tell us more about that?
Yeah, because I mean, so when, just as we see, if we see somebody do something and they become successful, or they do anything grand, but then it's all about them being selfish, we see them turn into somebody like classic story, somebody rotten, somebody greedy, somebody who's mean, not nice. And like, I don't want to be remembered as the greedy old man who wants nothing but money and everything for themselves. Like, no one wants to be around that. And so what I also figured out is you can't give away what you don't have. And so you have to become something or someone before you can give someone, but you also are already someone in the process. And so it's about growth and expansion, your being, to do more, to have more, to be more, do more, have more. And through that is where I learned that process of be, do, have, and figuring out that you have to be, and then be a little, do a little, have a little, be a lot, do a lot, have a lot. And I feel like so many times are focused on the have, especially nowadays in 2025 and where we're at in the process and speed of how we feel like life is going, that we're so focused on the have, is that if we have those things, if we're not the type of person that can sustain those things, they're just going to fall through the cracks. And what's the point of having something if you can't sustain it?
Yeah, I love this so much. And in the book that I wrote in 2022, Soul Life Balance, I talked about the differences between materialism and consumerism. And a lot of times, like with materialism, we are outsourcing our worth in brands, essentially, right? Whereas consumerism is like, oh, let me just buy that thing on Amazon or this or that. It's the have, right? It's those things that we're just consuming to your point. And, you know, I really love to hear that part of what you're teaching, your core philosophy is be, do, have, because as I mentioned to you, like what got me on this path of like the spiritual awakening was being on a path of do, have, be. Subconsciously, I would do the things that would get me to have the whatever it was that I was seeking. And then I was like, okay, now I have time to be. But wait a second, who am I? And that was really what set me off on this journey of self-discovery. So be, do, have, like how, walk us through that, your framework, how you're teaching students and just everyone you come encounter with.
Yeah. And so the main umbrella is what we focus on is relational leadership. And so we believe that people just go along who they get along with and that they like pretty simple. And so within teaching what leadership is, we also have to talk about what leadership is not. Leadership is also not, and again, this is not to take away from anybody or anything, but leadership is not about positions or titles, and it's not about seniority or status. And so would you rather be around somebody because you have to, or because you want to?
Want to all day.
Want to, right? Because if somebody is forced to be with you or to follow you, like that's resentment, and that's not leadership, that's dictatorship or just annoying. And so it's more about, and we oftentimes think that leadership is about power or it's about dominance or being in total control. But leadership is actually about competence. It's about connection, and it's about expansion and comprehension. And so going at leadership from a different perspective and talking, and not leadership as far as your role on a team, your role on a meeting board, a board meeting in a company, on a sports team or any type of team. But what about your role as a brother? What about your role as a sister? What about your role as a son or a daughter or a husband or a wife, a teammate, classmate? Like we are so focused on you wanting people to be around you, because at the end of the day, you are always making people feel something.
Have you ever felt overwhelmed by emotions and unsure how to move through them? Sam created the Breath Club to help you find calm and clarity. In this free online community, Sam teaches how to regulate your nervous system through breath work and process emotions effectively. Did you know that most emotions only last 90 seconds when you fully allow yourself to feel them? This is called the 90-second rule, and it's a powerful tool backed by science for emotional healing. Each week, Sam hosts live calls to guide breathwork practices and create real connection. You'll also get access to an online course and pre-recorded breathwork videos. The link to join is in the show notes.
And so we define leadership within one word, and that word is influence. Leadership is influence, meaning based on your behavior, your thoughts, your words, your actions, how you come across, your body language, the energy that you give to other people, you always have the ability to make people feel, think, and act. And so that's the end goal, is to have all of that be embodied. But again, where do we start? And that's the be. And I believe that your being is first off starts with your self-talk, your communication. And communication was such a challenging thing for me to do, because I also know what it's like to not be a good communicator with myself. And so, but again, through that process is that you are the best person that you are the best person to help the person that you once were. Yeah. And so in communication, not just how you talk to other people with external communication, but how do you talk to yourself, internal communication? And that's where everything starts. Like everything was once a thought. And what I've learned and is that when you tell yourself something, people receive information, and people always tell themselves things through the lens of a story. Mm-hmm. Even when it's facts, like we accept the facts. but we turn those facts into a story in our mind. And so what you constantly tell yourself is a story running in your mind. It's like a movie projector, like it's constantly showing and running a story. And so we kind of talked about this in Dallas, that your brain has a reticular activation system. And so basically what that does is that it filters what's important in your brain to what's not important in your brain. And the things that are important to your brain are the things that are the most consistent and the things that are repeated the most. And so I love to tell people, your words don't just matter, your words are matter. And the best piece of advice I've ever got is that you become what you tell yourself. Yes. And that is so true. And so I first started with and here's how I know B is the first step, is because I first started with affirmations to myself in the mirror. Like I really wrote handwritten affirmations. I put them all along my mirror. And so I would look at myself and I would read those out loud and look at myself. And so then I would say, okay, I'm all these things. And then I wouldn't take action on them. And so if you tell yourself one thing and you don't act on it, what is that?
You're out of alignment. You're out of integrity, right?
It's a lie.
It's a lie. Yeah, it'd be even more straight up for sure.
It's a lie. It's strictly a lie. And what I've realized is and what hurts me is we all do this, but time and time again, so often we lie to ourselves.
True. Yeah, I think there's a big movement of toxic positivity. Like, did you see the movie Barbie?
Yeah.
So good. So
dude,
good.
Bro, I saw it with my girlfriend, dude. It is such a good movie.
It's one of the most deeply spiritual movies I've ever seen, for sure. But what I loved about it is there's this thing called the Hopi prophecy. And the Hopi prophecy comes from the Hopi tribe in parts of Arizona, essentially. And the Hopi prophecy says there's two different paths we can go on. We can either become more severed from our bodies and from who we are and lie to ourselves, or we can reconnect. And the movie illustrates the two different paths, with Barbie leaning in, doing the shadow work, with Ken being the severed path until the end when he finally comes around, and he does. But the point being, at the beginning of the movie, when she's quote unquote malfunctioning and all of that, she could have easily utilized toxic positivity and be like, oh no, it's fine. It's fine. Everything's good. But she's like, wait a second, something's off. Let me look at that. And that's the shadow work, the term coined by the Swiss psychiatrist Carl Jung, to the shadow, to make the unconscious conscious awareness. So this probably goes back to when you were 250 pounds or so, and you were thinking about taking your own life, and you were starting to do these affirmations. Is that what you're referring to when you say that?
Yeah. And so I was just like, okay, I got to start with telling myself good things. And that is so great to start. You have to start telling yourself good things. I'm here to tell you, there's no amount of cockiness. There's no sense of ego. There's no sense of conceitedness to think or to tell yourself good things about yourself, because I promise you have God-given talents that are only unique to you and only you can exemplify to his greatest ability. That is so true. And so first of all, telling yourself that good things is essential. If you don't tell yourself good things, if you don't like the way that you think about yourself, you're in for a tough go, because everywhere you go, there you are. And not to be like, I don't care about your problems, but that is just something you have to deal with.
What was your experience like in not telling? See, because there's this gray area, right? Because we want to utilize positive affirmation and telling ourselves good things, but also we can't lie to ourselves. So what did that experience look like for you, so that you weren't just bypassing saying the positive things, but actually holding yourself accountable so you could feel that way? Right.
And so a lot of times we have we all get big visions of where we want to be or what we want to do, what we look like. And so the end goal is always in mind. And we have that. And so it's okay, how can I that's always in mind. So I got to get there. And so a lot of times we just tend to go full steam into something. And I was growing up, I was always maybe my ADD or whatever, but I was always starting something, but not necessarily finishing everything. And so that when I first started my fitness, and I was always I was a fit kid, but I wasn't a fit kid. I could play sports at a higher level, but I wasn't the most fit looking person. And so I was very self-conscious in my image and super insecure about it. And so at first I started telling myself these things, and I started at one extreme. I'd go from not doing anything and then doing this full-blown fitness program that I would just have to go every single day, do this, do that, and follow it to a T. And all of a sudden a week and a half goes by and I'm burnt out, I'm tired, and there's no longevity in this. So I would stop. And then I would pick it back up again, go for a short period of time and stop. And it's like, stop, start, stop, start, stop, start, stop. It's like 1 step forward, 2 steps back, 1 step forward, 3 steps back. And I was like, okay, like something's not working clearly. And so I was like, okay, I'm prone to start things and not quite finish them. Why is that? Okay, I might be biting way off more than I can chew. I think I am this type of person, but that's my end goal. I'm not quite there now. So you have to be really honest with yourself, which is honestly really hard to do, and really see yourself to where you are at currently right now. And a lot of times we think we are better in certain areas than we actually are. And that's kind of hard to come to terms with, being honest. And so you had to be real. I'm not, the reason why I look like this and feel like this is because of the way I'm talking to myself, and it's the decisions and choices that I'm making. And so I literally started with the most stupidest thing possible. And that is like, it sounds stupid, but I was like, okay, I'm going to start with the most basic things. I'm going to do things that I know that I can do. And what that was is when I first started my fitness journey, it's like, okay, scrap it, restart, like bulldoze the whole entire foundation. Let's build a new one.
Love it.
Here's where I start. So here's literally how I started. I would walk to the gym, and I had to walk up to the stairs. You scan in, walk up the stairs to the main part of the gym. The locker rooms were underneath. I'd walk up to the top of the stairs, and I'd stand at the top of the stairs, and I'd look around for 5-10 seconds. I would turn around, go back downstairs, go back to my dorm room. And I ask, when I share my story, when I'm speaking to students across the country, I ask, did I go to the gym?
Yes.
And people are like, no. I'm like, did I go to the gym? And they're like, no. And I'm like, did I go to the gym? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, did I work out? No. I wasn't there yet. And so sometimes we think we're at a certain place when we're not. And we have to be honest with ourselves and be, where are we? And how can we make action where we are to where we need to get to go? Like there's steps to this. And I don't care if it's the most stupidest thing, if it sounds like the stupidest thing, if it sounds like the dumbest thing to yourself, or if somebody else tells you it's the dumbest thing. But the number one way to increase confidence in yourself is to keep the promises. And it is to start with the smallest thing possible. A lot of times we think we need to do this most extravagant thing, or this thing that's way out of our comfort zone, in order to just gain a little bit of confidence. But in reality, it's little habitual actions that stack evidence of you being who you say you are and doing the things you say you're going to do. And you stack evidence. Confidence isn't a personality trait. It's a skill set. And you create the skill set by stacking evidence.
It's so good. It's so good. It reminds me back when I used to go to the gym. I stopped going to the gym for about 5 years. I just started again. But I used to go to the gym. This was 10 plus years ago. And I would have those mornings, probably like 6 a.m. or something. And I'd go to the gym. I'd be there for like 5 minutes, maybe 10 minutes. And then I'd come home, and I wouldn't kick myself about it. Like my roommates would give me shit about it, right? But for me, I was like, no, I'm keeping up with the consistency. That's a win that I made it, you know? And I think a big part of this not only is everything that you're saying, but like celebrating these little wins and like acknowledging yourself for it, because you're building the habits.
Yeah, no, 100%. And on top of that, man, it's hard, because you start to change your lifestyle, and so you start to make different decisions. Everybody got something to say about it. Like,
I have a quote for that.
There's fat shaming, there's fit shaming, like you can't win. It seems like you can't win either way.
Yeah, I have a quote for that. You'll appreciate this. It's from James Whitaker, and it goes, "Hang out with people with a common future, not a common past."
Yep. Because that's awesome, because I mean, where your past, where you've been, is no indication of where you are now, and where you are now is no indication of where you're going.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so that's where I started. I started with the most stupidest, most simplest thing that I could think of to accomplish. And when I say evidence, I mean evidence. Like you have your things, and you write stuff down, because it's so hard to believe in something you can't see and you can't touch. And there's only two ways we see ourselves, and that's through a lens or through a mirror. And so sometimes we're so focused on, not sometimes, for the majority of the time, all we see is what other people are doing, how great other people are, what gifts other people have, and all the amazing things other people are doing, because that's constantly what we see, and are feeding ourselves what other people and greatness and all these glorious things, that we don't take the time to actually consider and look internally of what gifts do we have, what greatness are we meant to be, because we are all born to do great things.
It's very true. That's very true. So all of this would be kind of like a hybrid of be/do in your model, wouldn't you say?
Yeah. And so being is communication, and communication creates connection, not just connection with other people, but you are connecting with yourself. Like, that is so important. And so once you have connection and you have communication, then you start with the confidence piece. And that's when you start taking those actions. And so it starts with your self-talk, and then it starts backing up that self-talk with the evidence. And because confidence, again, is not a personality trait, it's a skill set. And so many times people think, oh, I don't have confidence. It's not that you don't have confidence. It's just at what level is your confidence at? And your confidence is basically just an expression of your identity, is your expression of your beliefs, because confidence is rooted in action. And so if confidence is rooted in your identity and in your beliefs, then even if you don't do good things, then you're still displaying your level of confidence, just not in a great way. And so you start with the great things and talk about good things. You start taking action. You start making promises. You start small. And for the majority, what I had to learn, and what's super hard, especially in this day and age, is that your confidence is also not rooted in the outcomes.
Oh, that is so hard. Yeah, the lesson that keeps on giving.
And so many people want to talk about outcomes and goals. And like, I'm a huge believer, like, yes, you got to have goals, but I love the quote, goals are just dreams with a deadline.
Yeah. Because
how are you going to get those goals? It's great to have those goals, and it's great to have outcomes. And what I've learned is that your confidence is rooted in the preparation, the reps, and it's rooted in the input, not the outcomes. Because like I said, like in sports, I'm a huge referencer person. I love taking principles and like adding it to multiple different things so people can learn different ways. And so going on in sports, like I could be on the bench, my team's playing, and it's an overtime, and all of a sudden the other team gets a deflection, it goes in the back of our net, we lose. Did I have control of that game? No. I'm not always in control of any outcome, but you are in control of the inputs, your decisions. You're in control of the conversations you have with yourself. You're in control of the choices you make to either deal with people or deal with yourself, or not deal with people and not deal with yourself.
It's such a good point about the inputs. I was slipping, I'd say, for a few weeks recently, and I every single night watching Game of Thrones, like, multiple episodes. Yeah. And it's really cool to rewatch Game of Thrones after so many years. Like, it is really cool. Yeah, I know for me, all my best friends know this about me, like, because I say it nonstop. Like, for me, don't tell me about the show that you're watching and try to get me to watch it, because that's the worst thing I can do, because I'm like an all or nothing type of guy, right? And if I'm like going well with my habits and routines, awesome. But then as soon as I like succumb to binge watching, it all goes out the window. So I did a little mini mushroom journey with a buddy, and he was like going straight to like bliss land. And for me, the word that you just used was the word that I used. It was inputs. I had too many inputs going in myself for the past few weeks of stuff that wasn't serving me. Like literally I'm on like maybe a gram or two of mushrooms just recreationally, and I'm like thinking I'm lost in Game of Thrones, I'm lost in this person's story, that person's story, and I'm just like, oh my God, because that is the shadow work. It's bringing all that subconscious stuff to conscious awareness. And that was my lesson from that. And now it's been a few weeks on the other side, and as much as like even last night I really wanted to watch Game of Thrones because it's been a couple of weeks now, and you know what, I didn't do it, right? And this is where we talk about like taking action, making those small habits, but they're it sounds silly, or some people might use the word stupid. I prefer silly, but like these little things compound and make a huge difference.
I mean, consistency compounds, and like just trying to be 1% better, like the math is dramatically increased as what that would be like if you just get 1% better every day. And I love how you talked in about what inputs you were talking about that didn't serve you. And so that's a question that I also ask myself is, okay, what is the cost that's going to take for me to get where I need to be? What do I have to do to get to where I want to be? But not many people talk about what shouldn't you do? What do you not do to get to where you want to be? And a lot of times, and yes, I'm guilty of that. I'm also a huge gamer. Like I play a lot of video games. I love anime. Like you see some of my Legos and my stuff. Like I'm a diverse interested, and I love arts, anything creative. I'm obsessed with. I listen to a lot of music. But sometimes, like you said, I'm an all or nothing guy. And so there's sometimes where, you know, I hop on a game or I hop on a show and all of a sudden like I love it. And there's some times where I just indulge too much of my time into that, and that doesn't serve me in the proper way to where I want to be. And so right now it's kind of, you know, it's go time to really cut out a lot of the distractions, but also have balance in that stuff, because it is important to have that to kind of decompress and reset and to distract you from, you know, the hardships of life. Sometimes you need that.
Yeah, I just want to highlight that the intentional distractions. A friend and I came up with this term called humaning, which our definition of humaning is to temporarily disengage from, we could call it spiritual or mindful practices, to chill the fuck out and just be a damn human. And I think it's important to understand, like, hey, when I am humaning, I'm not going to shame myself. Like if I'm going to get a tub of that heaven ice cream, literally it's called heaven. It's vanilla ice cream with chocolate fudge, peanut butter swirl, and brownie in it. And I'm going to like just lay on the couch and I'm going to do it. I'm going to enjoy myself doing it. I'm not going to shame it. So as we begin to wrap this thing up, Trevor, I just want to go to the final step of like have and really hone this in, because like, it can be so easy to either focus on the end destination, as you alluded to with goal setting, or to outsource our sovereignty in material possessions or having something. Like, how is it that you approach have?
If you're looking for a powerful and transformative experience for your next event, consider bringing in Sam Kabert as a keynote speaker. Sam's message of soul life balance and his expertise in mental health and mindfulness resonate deeply with audiences. He not only inspires with his story, but also offers practical tools like breathwork to help attendees regulate their emotions and reconnect with themselves. You can even have Sam lead a guided breathwork journey, creating a truly unforgettable experience. To learn more or book Sam for your event, check out the link in the show notes to book a call with Sam now.
So I see have as the byproduct of your being and your doing. Having is something that is what you receive from others, not necessarily what you get personally. When you are a good communicator and you are able to communicate well in a manner where you are meaningful and intentional with your words, and you speak in a way where you're genuinely caring about others, you want to empower others, you care for others, when you actually want to make connections with people and you do things with confidence, not in a way where it's all about me, but in a way where, you do this, you will have the results. You have connection, and you have and then you have confidence as your due, and you have a level of competence. And so when you're able to connect with somebody, and you're able to have, so like human to human, like just how we are, this past weekend, we didn't know each other, and now we're brothers, right? That's just connection piece. And then when you do things at a level of competence, people don't just believe you, they also believe the process and believe what you're doing. And so I say, if you have a level of a lack of communication and lack of confidence, which is lack of connection and lack of competence, people don't trust you or what you're doing. If you have a lack of connection but a increased level of conviction or competence, people don't necessarily believe you, but they might believe like what you're doing. If you have a higher level of connection and then a lower level of competence, people just like enjoy your presence and like being around you, and that's, oh yeah, they're a good person, they're nice, but they don't necessarily believe what you're doing. But if you have a level of connection that is enjoyable, and you have a level of competence that people appreciate, you have a recipe for people want to be around you, and they want to learn from you, but they also want to do what you're doing and be a part of what you're doing. And so that result is your character, and that is when people hear your name, what do they think about you?
I love it. I love the fact that we're not talking about traditional have here, because at the basis of like having something that's matter, what matters with that is the feeling. And I love how you're going straight to having the feeling that associated to it.
And the have is the have is basically influence. Your have is your character. Your have is the fact that you help people, you empower people, you allow people to be better versions of yourself. And the have is the people that trust you, the people that like you. And so you have influence.
Yeah, I love that. I love that so much. Trevor, it's so awesome to connect with you and go deeper on the podcast. I'm sure we're going to have more. What's the best way for people to stay in touch with you, and what projects are you currently working on?
Yeah, and so you can follow me on Instagram at Trevor.Hult. Our company is Core Trainings. Core Latin for heart, so everything we do is to be led from the heart. So you can check us out at our website. If you want to book us or come do a leadership workshop or speak, is www.coretrainings.com. And right now we're also in the process, super exciting, is a nonprofit. It's called Mindset Mastery 360, and we have about over 1,000 members now. Wow. And it's international, and either by the end of this year or next year, we're looking to do some leadership work in Africa. So expanding the globe and empowering the world and changing the world one person at a time.
Dude, I love it so much. And I didn't even know about Mindset Mastery or nonprofit. That's amazing.
We'll have to talk more about that, and we'll love you to be a part of that as well, brother.
Yeah, it sounds so cool. Well, I will personally see you in a few days. Looking forward.
Yeah, man, I'm excited.
And for everyone listening, make sure you connect with Trevor and his whole team over there. See what they're up to. They're truly doing amazing things. Trevor, thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you, dude. I had a blast, man. I can't wait to be back.
Yeah, we'll do it again soon.
All right, brother.
Thank you so much for listening to the very end. I hope you enjoyed this episode just as much as I did. Please make sure to go ahead and go to the show notes, give Trevor a follow, connect with him and his company, and also join the Breath Club. I mean, if you've been listening to this podcast for a while and you haven't joined the Breath Club yet, what are you waiting for? There's pre-recorded breathwork exercises. You're going to get live weekly breathwork sessions with me and an online community where we're going to be holding you accountable to holding space for yourself so that you can not only do that for yourself, but hold space for others. So thank you so much for being here, and I will see you on the next episode of the Soul Seeker Podcast. Thank you so much for listening to the very end. I hope you dug this podcast just as much as I enjoyed it. If you got anything at all, please, if you could just do me a favor and leave a 5-star review wherever you listen to this podcast, it helps the show grow. So thank you for considering to leave a review. If you want to go deeper with Soltara or Elan, you can find the links to connect with them in the show notes. And if you want to work with me, the best way to work with me, the easiest way to work with me is the free way, and that's by joining the Breath Club. The link to the Breath Club is in the show notes. And also know that I'm available for one-on-one support, that is coaching and guidance, as well as keynotes and breathwork journeys for conferences and events. Thank you so much, and I will see you on the next episode of The Soul Seeker.